Welcome back to another episode of Inactive Listening. If this is your first time here, I am your host, Logan, and this is going to be another short episode, just like episode 1. This is another re-recording. I mentioned in episode 1, if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. I mentioned that episodes 1 and 2 were going to at least be temporarily re-recorded, and Walter isn't here right now to help. He's busy this weekend, and I'm just doing this so it's done. Just as like I said, I don't know if it's going to be temporary, but it might be. It might be permanent. A temporary new episode of episodes 1 and 2, just because they don't meet our audio quality that we would like. They were both just very bad. I think in episode 2, we finally have a microphone, and it's connected to, I think, Walter's computer, and it's closer to him. It's a very kind of cheaper microphone. I don't really remember if it's his or if it's mine, or if I think I got it for him for Christmas maybe, and it was just a very cheap microphone. Yeah, I'm very quiet in it. There's times where he's very quiet and then gets really loud. It just wasn't good audio quality. So this is, once again, this is the microphone that we use on our new episodes. Episode 3 will not sound like this, but it will sound at least acceptable, in my opinion. What did we talk about in episode 2? Well, there were a handful of things. One of those things being that Walter is in college now. Our first episode, it was like the day before or days before he was going to go off to college. He finally did. And then it took a long time for us to record again because I was like in the middle of, well, I wasn't even in high school yet. It wasn't senior year. I was about to start senior year like the next day or two, which means I would be playing soccer because that's my main sport. I'm a soccer player. And then I did track all 4 years of high school. And then I did swimming for my junior and senior year. I've played soccer my whole life up until now that I'm in college. My college, Purdue University, does not have a men's soccer team, and I haven't tried for like intramural stuff, so maybe next year I'll do that. But regardless, we talked about Walter's winter quarter, but prior to this, in episode 1, he wasn't in college yet. He was like pumped to go, but wasn't in yet. So now that he's in, he talked a bit about college in our original episode, and then about how bad winter quarter was for him. It was just, he described it as just being like very brutal. He was just like sad and he ended up quitting the swim team that he was on for his college, which is insane because he's been swimming since he was like 6. He quit that because he wanted to just try to like study more. His college, especially, very very tough school. College in general is just tough, especially depending on what you're doing. But he just needed or felt he needed to solely focus on what he was doing, so he quit swim, which made it worse. Yeah, it was rough. At the time of this recording, I think this was like March. I was in track, so I had already went through soccer, already went through swim. Swim without Walter was very interesting. Of course, that like it sucked without having him, and we missed the seniors and stuff like that. But it was overall it was a really good season. we did really well. I ended up going my second year swimming ever. Like prior to joining swim, I really could not swim. Junior year, I kind of learned how to swim. Senior year, I ended up going to sectionals to compete. I was 16th out of 16. Whenever you go to like conference, sometimes I mix these up between sectionals and conference, like which one. I'm pretty sure conference though comes first. Everyone competes. You kind of get times, and in like there was 5 other schools or however many other high schools. All of us are competing. All of us are getting times. So within that, I am number 16, and the top 16 swimmers go to sectionals and compete pretty much the next round. And then, like, winning sectionals or getting a certain time in sectionals allows you to go to state. That's how this works. So, no, I did not go to state, but I mean, my second and only year swimming, I went to sectionals, and I did worse. I swam the 50 free. Um, I think that was the only thing I swam. But yeah, I mean, it was just a blast to be able to go, and I was excited about that. I was bummed because I got like slightly injured right before during a warm up set sectionals. I like cut my toe or something, slipping off of the blocks. I scraped my toe, I think, and then it was like bleeding, and it just kind of, I don't know, something like that. If you're not a seasoned veteran, if you will, like if it was for soccer, I think I'd be perfectly fine and forget about it. Something like this, though, I still haven't been swimming that long, so whatever. And then it just kind of threw me off. And yeah, I mean, I added time, so I did worse, but regardless, it was still fun. So yeah, within that, though, I keep saying that, but just Walter's winter quarter went rough. Um, and then we were kind of in March at this point. In the original recording, he had quit swim because he felt he needed to focus more. He talked about how, like, some people are, they get to go do clubs and stuff like this. Like, oh, we're just going to go make bowls in the ceramics club and all of that. And I don't know. He was just in swim and, like, bogged down by academics. So he ended up quitting. Which, if you listen to our latest episodes, which I highly recommend, he talks more about that, about his current plans for swimming. Um, he mentioned the idea of studying and talked about, like, if you want an A in college, you absolutely have to study. And during this time, it was kind of whatever, he's in college. And of course, like, I want to know, but I'm not there, right? I'm still in high school. I'm a senior at this point, and I'm just listening. We talked about the difference between college and high school. Of um, high school, just you could put. I quoted. Well, this is quoting myself of saying, like, I put in 70% effort to in like just turn in homework and stuff like that, and to get an A. It really isn't that bad, depending. Like, calculus was challenging for me just because I was kind of lazy, falling behind, and just, like, falling behind, trying to get help. Sometimes it wasn't available, and then we're already moving on to the next unit. But then other classes that really could just turn in the homework and give kind of minimal effort and still do very well in. But yeah, at the time it was whatever. Now though, like, this is absolutely true. If you want high grades in classes, you have to study. There is, like, no way that you will get an A. Even in, you know, I have some English classes that are whatever to me, but, like, you still have to give a decent effort for a decent grade, you know? Um, and these are like my English classes, there is no exams. So this is still putting in effort and like knowing what you're doing in class if you want to try to get a B and an A. I've since already, like, I did calculus in college and passed. Um, yeah, which I talk more about that in other episodes, but basically that's what we talked about in this particular section about studying. And high school is relatively easy. College is a lot harder, and he mentioned that. And when I say or high school is easy, like in comparison to college, high school is easy. College is very hard. Um, and I guess, yeah, I kind of took him for granted at the time, or not that I like didn't listen, or it just didn't immediately, apply to me at the time. But maybe at some point, the original episode we will re-release. I'm sure we will. It's not the end of the world if you really want to hear everything that we talked about. Um, Not super entertaining, but it was our second episode. So um, during this time, I'm in track, like I said. So I wasn't a big fan of track. I've never liked track. I never liked running. Um, I loved soccer. Good at it. I played defense. Um, I played all over, but in high school specifically, I became center back in defense. I got defender of the year back to back. My junior and senior year, I was team captain senior year. Yeah, it's kind of been my passion. Swim was amazing. I wish I would have done swim longer because it's just such a great group of guys and just so good. I highly recommend. I can't speak for every single high school what swim is like, but our swim at our high school was amazing. I met like probably almost all of my absolute closest friends in swim. Um, I talked about Purdue because at this time I had put in applications and gotten accepted to Purdue Northwest, Bradley, NIU, which is Northern Illinois University, um, and there might have been one other. I don't remember. But yeah, it was. And then I also put in an application to get into the engineering School of Engineering at Purdue University. I got rejected and from Purdue University. Like, they just didn't accept me. And I was really bummed about it. I remember being bummed about it, and I know all of this. Listening back at the episode, I kind of just like shake my head of the things that I said. I seemed very like, and I even mentioned this to Walter of like, I feel like I'm speaking and it sounds very arrogant. Um, which I mean, yeah, I was very upset. I got accepted to all these others, and then I didn't really want to go to Purdue University. I wanted to go to Purdue Calumet. It was a smaller school, and I kind of just had this idea from the start. And then maybe at some point I would just transfer to Purdue University because the degrees are different. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't get accepted. It was a record year last year, and this year actually, as I will be a sophomore, is another record year of applicants. So I don't know. I just found it very hard to believe that I was a 3-sport athlete. I had like a 3.9 something. Um, Weighted, I think. I don't remember. Pretty high GPA, 3-sport athlete. Um, some other stuff, I'm sure, I don't really remember. I had some AP credits and some college credits and this and that. And it just was hard for me to believe that, you know, this school that I didn't even really care about that much didn't accept me. I don't know. Like, I was annoyed in a way. We went and took a tour there. Still was annoyed when we talked to the counselor, I think, or like the dean or whoever. His attitude was kind of just like, well, if you got accepted somewhere else for engineering, I recommend you just go there, which rubbed me the wrong way just because I was like, well, I don't, you'd think that you would try to help or try to do anything to have someone come to your school, and he didn't. It seemed in a way like I was just some kid who was just bummed. Which, I mean, looking back at it, yeah, that's probably what I seemed like because I was just irritated. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I reapplied. I reapplied to the exploratory studies, just like the general kind of thing. And that's what I got into, and then I ended up going to Purdue University. So you'll hear about that in later episodes, but yeah, I'm in Purdue University in exploratory studies or just general because a lot of my classes are like I'm going to need them anyway. So I'm just taking a lot of my general classes right now. I'm not taking any major classes, if you will. But like right now, at the time of this recording, I'm in Calculus 2, I'm in Physics, I have 2 English classes, and yeah, I had a computer science class, but I dropped it. Last semester, I was in Calc 1 and Econ, Chemistry, a lot of just general class stuff that kind of have to take. But yeah, that's what I'm in. And I just noted that because whenever I was talking about it in the original recording, these were my thoughts, what I was doing versus how they turned out right now. We talked about mechanical engineering versus MET or design engineering. Um, Walter kind of talked about design engineering a bit and how it seemed kind of like fake almost. Um, I had the impression of it like just making less money and not being as, but I don't know. As we've gone on and I've done more research and he's probably done more research, there is a difference and I can guarantee you they both are real. I am currently planning on going into MET. At the time of this recording, I wanted to go for mechanical engineering. MET is mechanical engineering technology. Um, and yeah, he is going for mechanical engineering. It's more theoretical. It is a lot more math and a lot more physics, and MET is less math. I wouldn't even say less physics, just less math, really. Not theoretical, more hands on. So, more physically doing stuff, physically building stuff, and a lot more like AutoCAD and designing, 3D modeling, that kind of stuff. That's more or less what an MET does. ME probably can do that stuff. I've talked to a handful of mechanical engineers and like recent ones in the last 10, 20 years that have went to Purdue and have graduated. Like, they didn't learn AutoCAD stuff. They didn't learn much 3D modeling unless they like chose the class themselves as like an elective or as a like a focus or a pathway, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. It's not something that's super widely taught, I guess, through mechanical engineering. Like if you are an ME, you're taking very ME specific courses, and MET at Purdue is, I mean, very much what I want to do. We both talked about it, of how interesting MET is, and like the design aspect, how cool that is, how fun that is, being able to do hands-on stuff. He mentioned the question of like who would hire just a bunch of METs if they could just hire MEs and they would do the same and more, um, which might be true, but also might not. I tossed the idea of doing an internship up at the same place that my uncle works. I've talked about that in other episodes further down the line. I'm going to be doing that again this summer as a mechanical engineer internship, and yeah, it depends on where you go, essentially. And this is not from the original episode. This is like me saying this right now, that a group of METs can 100% be more valuable than a group of MEs if you are in a environment where you are doing hands-on stuff, you are doing a lot of designing stuff. Just having someone who's just sitting and doing theoretical work isn't necessarily useful, Usually, like, you can have a handful of these people, but like at Gertz, even though some people are MEs, likely doing MET work, right? And that's not something I would guess that they've learned becoming an ME. It's probably something that they've learned in other jobs, or they've learned at Gertz how to do what they do. So yeah, this is just some insight. At the time, I didn't have much to say about it because I didn't really know. We've talked in later episodes, Walter and I, that I've like transitioned into going into mechanical engineering technology, and we've talked a bit about that. There's likely a slight pay decrease between the two on average, depending on where you go, though. Once again, like if you're going to a place like Gertz, where I've talked about a small company, I'm not going to get into much of it right now, or like Caterpillar or somewhere like that, an MET likely will get paid equivalently as an ME because, like, yeah, you are theoretical as a mechanical engineer and you've done all this math and all of that. MET, not saying that like an MET doesn't do any math, but doesn't go through as much. MET goes through, at least at Purdue, like up to Calculus 2. That's what I'm in right now. And a mechanical engineer goes through all of that, and then Calc 3, and then linear algebra and differential equations, and then there's one other math class after that that's even higher. So there's like more math that you have to learn as an ME, but as I was saying, like, you can do all this theoretical, and that's fine, and that's good, and it is useful. Like, there is parts of that, but this person, like, can physically communicate this to the shop. They can physically model and have, an understanding of the technology behind what they're doing. They are going to be more, like, vital, depending on where you're going or what the company is doing. So this is just like, not as like a rant, but this is kind of the difference between ME and MET a little bit. We've talked about it in other episodes, like I've said, but during the time of this recording, we kind of talked about it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be ME, but I've always been interested in MET work. And then the last part of the episode, for like a good portion, we talked about scrapping. Used to scrap, like drive around late at night, and you can find scrap metal. People leave it out intentionally because it is kind of like a form of recycling. You can get paid for it, and then some people take the time to go out and drive and get the scrap and then take it in. There is sorting, there is cleaning if necessary. Like, there's a process to it. But yeah, Walter was just interested in that, and him and I talked back and forth about that. So that was a good portion of it, just about like what's the holy grail of scrapping and what is, what do you not want to find. And I mentioned it's kind of like fishing because, you go out there and sometimes you don't find anything, sometimes you do, sometimes you find too much and you like can't carry anything else. So yeah, it's fun. It's thrilling. You make money off of it, which is nice. That's why I did it, because I needed some money. And it was something to do like once a week, twice a week, because you spend one day like going to the scrapyard. But yeah, it's interesting to many people who maybe don't know the concept or have any idea what I'm talking about. I mean, I'll gladly talk about it in greater detail in later episodes. I don't want to re-dig into everything that we talked about, just because these are going to be shorter episodes, just as like a halfway brief episode 1 and 2, what we originally talked about, um, what to expect later on. It's these first two episodes are going to sound like this. Next episode, the next episode, the next episode, up till, I don't know, episode 14, episode 10 through 14. Or maybe 15. I don't know. Or maybe even 16. I don't really remember, but yeah, the quality, I mean, is what I'm talking about. Quality increases. Some episodes are a little rough, like an episode that we have out with my friends from high school, Seth and Peter, come on the podcast. Audio is very rough on that episode as well, just because there was a lot of like surgery I had to do. I didn't upload it for months and months. We recorded it. Like, I think that the end of that week, I ended up going to college. Obviously, didn't edit it. Walter went to college like the next week or 2 weeks or whatever. And then Seth went off and Peter went off as well. So, it was rough, but we ended up only using Seth's audio. That's why, like, I'm very quiet in parts of it. Walter's very quiet, and then it's very loud for, like, Seth. Just because there was a ton of mic bleed. We were kind of in a secluded room. It was rough, and I apologize for that. That's probably, like, our only other very rough episode. But outside of that, kind of smooth sailing. I think you might be able to deal with it. But yeah, you can, from episode 3 to 4 to 5, you can kind of hear the change in audio quality. I think our stories are still entertaining and they're still good. But our latest episodes are, I think, where we've actually transitioned into like a very like amateur level, I guess. Or, I don't know. I'm not going to say professional. I don't think we're there yet, but much, much better. Higher quality microphones. I think we're both loosening up. But yeah, this episode, obviously just me, but every other episode is going to be with Walter in it as well. Unless at some point we do episodes without one of us, which we've seen in other podcasts. But yeah, essentially, that's what that was. I think maybe in the very beginning of episode 2, I talked about podcasts that I also pull a lot from. He talked about Chuckle Sandwich. I talked about Ear Biscuits. But yeah, I mean, there's a handful of podcasts I listen to kind of get ideas and get, what I want our podcast to be similar to, I guess, while also being unique. But if you enjoyed, which I really hope you did, thank you. And there's more to come. If you did enjoy, if you have listened this far, thank you once again. To many people who've already listened to our original episodes 1 and 2, I don't imagine you'll come back and listen to these episodes, But to anyone new, welcome to Inactive Listening. Even at this recording, our original recording, we didn't have the name yet. That didn't come until episode 3. So you'll hear in the next episode that I mention, or one of us mentions, that we finally have a name, and we've figured out a little bit more of like recording and stuff like that. This was a long time ago. This was all a long time ago. I don't remember exactly when our third episode came out. but it was probably after he got out of college for the first year, and I was done, and I was graduated, I believe. So, yeah. So there you go. I mean, if you listen this far, thank you very much. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be a temporary episode, if this is going to be permanent, but I hope that did enough to sum up kind of what we talked about, some ideas. It was like an hour-long episode. This is half that time. But if you enjoy our podcast, which I really hope you do, please stick around, listen to other episodes. From here on out, like, it does get worse in the next episode, like I said, but the stories are still there, and starting episode 3, you'll actually hear, like, what we kind of started out. We started out as almost a year ago now, because I have 3 weeks left, and then I'm done with my first year of college. So episode 3, I think I had just graduated, essentially, so yeah, you'll hear a lot of improvement if you continue on, but our latest episodes are, in my opinion, like our best. I think we get better and better each episode, and I don't know. The quality thing is something that bothers me a bit. I don't want to push ourselves out as like bad quality, but at the same time, our first episodes they're rough. I mean, I don't know what you might expect, because we don't know what we're doing, We really have no idea. We just want to try something to close friends that like to talk to each other, and but our very first 2, I think, are just so rough that I don't want to give that as a first impression. Thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, once again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we will see you guys in the next episode.